Hey guys, this is Stonebank and welcome to episode 4 of Studio Sessions. It's starting to feel like commitment now. For this episode, what I thought we could do is just showcase some post-processing. So things we can do with plugins, little tricks, little chains and things like that to turn very simple sounds into more advanced, more creative, better sounds. Yeah, better sounds. So I've got some examples lined up here. And every single sound starts with the init preset of Serum. Natural. First things first, we have this pattern here. Very basic. And with everything on, we get this. So straight off the bat we can tell there's this sort of rubbery sort of sound, this raspiness, and that's all coming from the disperser plugins, which is these two here. I've layered up two, so there you go. And without them, obviously we've got some EQ as well to quickly run through this. We've got EQ, we've got a reverb, top end cut off. We also have uber loud, which you've probably seen in the other videos. That's just sort of pushing the mids and the tops, and another one because it got greedy. Without a disperser, it sounds like this. And with, just sounds like more of a punch. If you don't have disperser by, I think it's kilohertz, yep, there is a workaround we can do. So if you have Pro Q, we can create a bunch of all-pass filters here. And what this will do is mess up the phase and you'll get this little raspy sound. So with the Pro Q, sounds like this. And I'll show you how to build it quickly actually. Right, so add that in, change the shape to all pass, crank up the filter slope, and then simply copy, add another one, paste, move it over, you get disperser. So yeah, so going from something very simple like this, pretty cool result. Right, next up, we have these chords here. And how can we spice this up? So first of all, I've added a vibrato plugin. I think it's native with Stonebank. I'm sure there's others out there. And what we're doing here is we're just automating the depth just on certain points of the melody, just to add some more accents and a bit more sort of creativity to something that's a bit static. And then on top of that, we've got an EQ, notching out some frequencies, boosted a few others, which will make more sense when it's going into a wave shaper. And what a wave shaper is going to do is, when we have like a low note that's obviously oscillating at a slower pace, and then we have a high note above making the chord oscillating very quick, those waveforms are lined up and then you're distorting them, you're going to get these cool crunchy results. Without, with, and then we just sort of finished it off with a little bit of reverb, a little bit of delay, some OTT, and just some EQ to brighten it up and take off the lows. And that came from this. So very simple, a little bit of distortion, a little bit of vibrato, and some EQ. And then we'll get that sort of nasally crunchy tone just using those very few plugins. Next up, we have this pattern here. And again, as mentioned, we're just using the default saw preset from Serum. And then what we're using here is some very short reverb and delays, a little bit of flanger, and then we're pushing everything with a transient shaper. So we're driving up the sustain, and then obviously the punch, and then we're holding it all down again with an OTT, some tasteful EQ to take off the lows, boost at the tops, and then some uber loud just to push it up even more. So what's going to happen is, I'll play you it first. we purposely use very short length reverbs and delays. So we're on 0.26 seconds and on the delay 52 milliseconds. And then without these exaggerated compression plugins, it sounds like this. What this heavy processor is doing is, one is obviously exaggerating the transient with the transient shaper, and the sustain on the transient shaper is trying to bring up those very small sort of tails on the reverb and delays. The OTT is also doing that, and the Uberlaus is taking it over another notch as well. So with it all, without, and then if we take off, so yeah, it's just a good example of how not everything has to be long-tailed reverbs and extended delays. You know, you can use them very sparingly in very small gaps and then sort of butcher them with loads of compression, distortion, or whatever you want, and you'll get some cool little results from something as simple as a little melody like this. Pretty cool. Next up. So for this one, we have a very simple pattern where there's a lot of gaps in between. So if I play it through now, and lighting up any clubs with that at the moment, are we? So with everything on, it sounds like this. What you notice, you'll hear obviously like there's loads of delays and reverbs and that, but the tail's going across, so like the delays more so, there's like a ringing noise to it. And what this is this comb filter. Well, there's actually two comb filters on this. So we have one comb filter, and that's just adding like a resonant tone across every single note at the same point. And then we've got an EQ, just cutting off some lows, boost some tops. We have a long delay. And we have a reverb as well. And then butchered with loads of compression. And what this OTT and the free Uberlaus are going to do is obviously those tails that come in, it's going to bring those delays up to pretty much the same volume as the initial actual synth hits. And then you'll notice this automation underneath here. So how we can sort of take this a little bit further and be a bit more creative is we could add an automation of another comb filter pushing different frequencies, and this is going to automate the dry wet in the gap. So when the delays are coming through here, this is going to start piping up. So yeah, just another way of adding creative delays using comb filters and automating the wet, dry and the gaps. Next up we have this one. And we've added a bit of mono legato on there just so it glides between the notes. And that will become relevant in a second. So for this one, with everything on, it sounds like this. Obviously vastly different to and how this is working is basically a ton of distortion in the middle, which I've just used a heavy saturation, driven that up. And then what we're doing before the distortion is creating pretty much all these artifacts that you're hearing. So this to this is mainly focused on, we have a volcano filter here. And as we're using that low pass sort of automation, that going into the distortion, the Saturn 2 on heavy saturation, and then a wave shaper as well. And then the EQ before just to highlight certain frequencies. Then we have another EQ, cutting off the lows, boosting the tops quite a bit. And then a reverb again, not too much, just to give it some space. And a bunch of Uberloud. Just brings it to life a bit more. So what we could do from this point is, well, I mean, we could change the automation, but we could also change these frequencies that we're boosting before we go into distortion. So and then we're going to get some cool results. You could automate that, you could add another filter, you can go nuts. So yeah, cool way to sort of get some raspy sort of growly design with a saw wave. Next up, this melody here. Sounds nice, sounds pretty. So yeah, from that melody to this. And the main sort of focus on this one will be guitar rig. Hasn't got to be a guitar to go through it. And for this one, I literally loaded up guitar rig, spun that, landed on something, picked that. It was the first one that I landed on. Guitar rig's a good tool to have when you want to just put stuff like vocals or even leads, drums, anything through and just see what you get. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those where you get those happy accidents and like the other video where I was showing you that rolling sampler. I'll have rolling sampler go and I'll just flick through stuff. And then anything that jumps out, quickly save it, put it to audio, keep going, and I'll end up with, you know, like 10 channels worth of random things. And then I'll either put them to one side and they'll sort of become part of the project later on, or I won't use them at all, or they'll feature heavily there and then to start processing them. But to have something like that where you can, you know, if you can't find something cool within all these presets, you're doing well. Guitar rig alone sounds like this. And we've added some chorus from Micro Shift just before. Added some simple reverb. Added some delays. Some OTT to squash it all down. And some Pro Q to just boost the top, so there's like a resonant frequency at some point, so I'll just dip that down. And a good old uber loud just to boost up the tops a bit. From one simple saw wave melody, it's a bit more creative in it. Next up we have this melody. For this processing chain, we just channeled our inner pendulum. And this one's quite simple to do. If we just take all these bits off. So we have some chorus. Just multiplying the voices. We're trying to add more voices going into the sort. I mean, you could do this obviously in Serum, but imagine this was a sample where you don't have an oscillator flexible enough to do this. Chorus will do the trick for you. We have a frequency shifter. It's creating this sort of phasey sound by having like the dry wet sort of in between 50-50, and then shifting the frequency over slightly. Creates a slight movement. And then this slight movement will be exaggerated heavily with a ton of distortion. And then we have some EQ, just tidying it up with the mid-range. We have a reverb, just adding sort of that room sound. And then we have delay. We have OTT to hold it all together. We have another EQ, just taking off the lows and taking down the tops a little bit. And I just smashed it back up again, didn't I, with like the high push on there and then the mid-range. So all together. And then like for this sort of stuff, you know, you could do hardcore riffs like that. So as a bonus, we've duplicated that one, made this melody instead, and all I've done on this one is just chilled back a bit on the distortion and changed the reverb to a bigger room. And then we now have, from the same sound, Pretty hardcore lead. So yeah, clever way, just using chorus, frequency shifters and a bit of distortion just to create from one static saw wave to that. Next up, we have this one. And what we're doing with this one is a tiny reverb, loads of compression, which is 3 OTTs. Seems excessive, but it will make sense. Another reverb which will automate here. See this bit here for the second half. Just create a way of like exaggerating those little sort of low notes and then letting it go back up from dry to wet. And we've got an EQ, just boosting out the mids because it got a bit thin with all the OTTs. We've got uber loud, pushing out the mids and tops. And then we have this plugin called texture, which is simply just adding some noise following like an envelope. So whatever, when it hears audio, it's going to layer some noise over the top. Again, you can do this in the synth, but like this one, you could add, you know, various things, various sounds. But for this one, we've used noise and it sounds like this. Cool little way of just adding some texture. So taking a boring sound, a hell of a lot of processing over the top, and that will exaggerate that sort of layer that you put on top, and you can get some cool results that way. And then some automated reverb never hurts. I think like the sort of theme that you're sort of getting from these is there's a lot of compression going on, there's a lot of OTT and uber loud, and that's because like the details that I'm sort of adding beforehand, I really want to push them to the front. And a lot of them are like reverbs, delays with very sort of intricate small tails, and then little details laid over like that texture one. And then once you butcher that with absurd amounts of compression, you're going to get some cool little results and artifacts popping through. And they're the sort of things that I'd never sit there and try and synthesize, or I'd never try and actually make. But once I'm sort of recklessly chucking things on, that's where the cool sort of sounds happen. And then it's like, right, cool, I want to work with that. And then it's, how do you control that? Do you know what I mean? So you can chuck loads of distortion on, you can jam EQs into distortion, you can filters, etc., etc. And a lot of times, you know, especially if you're new to this sort of stuff, you'll end up with a ball of mess. And the trick is to learn how to control that and sort of hold it down. OTT and uber loud are great ways, using clippers to sort of like stop it going past that wall, and then you can just keep pushing, and then using EQs to take out the lows and tops, and that will then react differently into all the different plugins that you're then pushing it through, and all the different compression and chains, etc. That's why like you Ableton users and Bitwig users are lucky, because you can just have these racks. And when I use Ableton and Bitwig, I've got various racks where I can just double click and I've got 10 OTTs with like 3 distortions in between and loads of EQs, and what comes out of it is mental. A little bit harder in Cubase because you kind of have to manufacture it in these sort of limited slots. Before there was only 8, so slightly better, but we're getting there, we're getting there. Next up for a cool little chain is this one. And then what we're doing with that is we're using a shimmer reverb. So a reverb where it pitches up or down 12 semitones, or how many semitones you want, in this case an octave up. So it's going to reverb the signal that you send in. That reverb is going to be an octave up, and you can do some cool sort of like glossy patterns over the top. So as a whole, it sounds like this. So yeah, it's just a cool way to sort of create those sort of dreamy, you know, you'll use it a lot in trance. Yeah, Valhalla shimmer, any shimmer. Then we have a main reverb, which is the same thing. So without everything on, let's try this. And then we have the main reverb. So have a shaper box, LFO tool, whatever you want. Just creating this sort of steppy 1/4 pattern. Loads of OTT. We have another reverb. So apparently 2 weren't enough. We have another OTT because 1 weren't enough. So as you can see with all these plugins, it's building. We've got like that sort of shimmer reverb, another reverb. Then we've got some shaper box sort of creating some movement. We're then drilling that in with OTT. We're adding some more reverb, and then we're drilling that result then with more OTT. And then, lo and behold, another shaper box, and this one's on 1/16s, and then we're going to automate this mix. So in between the gaps, whilst all these reverbs are playing here. Creates that sort of shimmered gated effects. And then another OTT, and Pro key chords to tighten it up and add some mids. Huge difference. Next up, we have this pattern here. Melody, whatever you want to call it. Keep calling it a pattern, don't I? And then a very static sort of sound, playing sort of steppy rhythm. How can we make that? How can we be more creative with that? Simple. Add a ton of EQs. And automate them all. Simply add some reverb afterwards. OTT for a change. And then I've got a clipper here just to hold it all down. Yeah, you can go nuts. I mean, that was pretty much the first pass, and to sort of jam that together. You could draw in some other little patterns like this. Yeah, that sounds awful. Go back to what it was. And last but not least, we have this one here. So yeah, what we've got there is just a short stabby melody, and how can we spice that up? So for this one, I've added 3 comb filters. So we have one here at 21.9 hertz, different frequency, 29.3, and then this one here at 47.2. It's irrelevant what numbers they are to sort of play with them. So if we add them one by one, you can add a slight delay to it. Add another one. Another one. You need these subtle little ringing noises in between, and then we're going to add some distortion and some OTT, some EQ there, just taking off the lows, and some uber loud. Tighten everything up. And then we've got a swarm reverb, use only reverb, and I've just cut off the top, so we've got like this sort of moody, low to mid-range reverb just sort of following in the background. So then altogether it sounds like this. This sounds quite eerie, you know, from a very flat sound like this. Simply adding a few comb filters, bit of distortion, some reverb, and a bunch of compression. So yeah, that's pretty much it really. As a recap, this video I kind of wanted to show you what you can do to something that's a very simple sound, you know, or a very simple melody. How you can add, you know, plugins that we've probably all got, you know, chorus, distortion, OTT, which is free anyway, and how we can take something that's so static, flat and boring and enhance it so much, you know, just a little bit of creativity, a few little automations, a few little plugins before distortion, compression, and, you know, some weird EQs or filter automation. And I find like the most fun I have is when I'm trying to sort of force something that doesn't sound good into being good. And I used to do this method years ago where I'd scroll through like my sample library, and then whatever I landed on, I had to use that sound in the song, you know, whether it was a dog barking or something stupid, but I'd find ways to manipulate the audio with post-processing to make it usable. One, obviously, that people wouldn't tell it was a dog. And I think doing things like that and digging a little bit deeper into your sound design and your processing, you can get some cooler results. Maybe next time you listen to your project, pick out one sound and go, right, watch back to any of the things that I've just shown you and go, right, how could I apply any of these to what I have now, and will it make it better? Will it make it more interesting? And I think, yeah, I think it could help. So I've been Stonebank, and that's been episode 4 of Studio Sessions, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-da!